Diane Keaton has died at the age of 79, sending shockwaves through the...
Diane Keaton did not pass away because of pneumonia. At least, that's what the last doctor who touched her body confirmed. He said there was a reaction inside her that he had never seen in 30 years of practice. A chain of biological phenomena not found in any medical record, a report sealed just hours after completion. From that moment, Diane Keaton's passing was no longer a normal medical case but became the greatest mystery Cedars-Sinai had ever kept. In Los Angeles' medical circles, that night is still spoken of as a taboo. A doctor lost his job, a file disappeared, and a conclusion was replaced with two words: pneumonia. What exactly did the doctor see inside her body? And why did he say that the truth would haunt the world forever? Before we begin unraveling Diane Keaton's final secret, prepare yourself, because what's about to be revealed may send chills down your spine. Los Angeles, early morning, October 12, 2025. The western sky still held a thin layer of mist. The streetlights shimmered like the breath of a night not yet gone. In the basement of Cedars-Sinai Hospital, the autopsy room lay silent, lit only by the cold gleam of fluorescent light reflecting off a metal table. On it lay a body, covered completely by a thin white sheet. Outside the door, the clock stopped at 12:48 a.m. The air in the room was thick, almost frozen. Every sound was swallowed, except for the dry, slow scratch of a pen against paper. The man sitting beside the table, the lead forensic doctor on duty, remained silent for a long time. He stared at the blood test results and the lung tissue images on the screen. The pale blue light cast shadows on his tired face. According to procedure, this examination was only to confirm the cause of death. The death certificate had already been signed less than 7 hours earlier. Primary bacterial pneumonia. No other contributing conditions. A clean, concise, unquestionable conclusion. But what kept the doctor's eyes fixed on the results wasn't doubt. It was that the numbers before him did not resemble any pneumonia case he had seen in 30 years. The body before him was Diane Keaton, 79 years old, the legendary actress from Annie Hall and The Godfather, an icon of American cinema for over 3 decades. Before her death, her health was said to be stable. She still took morning walks with her 2 dogs, still posted photos on Instagram, still called her daughter in New York. So her sudden passing from pneumonia was hard to believe. When the white sheet was lifted, the room fell silent. A pale silver mark appeared on her left shoulder, about 7 centimeters long, flat, cold, and waxy to the touch. There was no bruising, no surgical match, no injection site. Under direct light, the skin reflected an odd shimmer, faintly coated as if with a thin layer of keratin. "Looks more like tissue regeneration than necrosis," one technician whispered. His voice was swallowed by the hum of the air vents. The colleague beside him gave a subtle gesture for silence. Upon closer inspection, they found small, scaly lesions scattered around her neck and shoulder, the same area where Diane had undergone surgery to remove squamous cell carcinoma in the late 1980s. Under the microscope, the skin tissue showed a strange inflammatory response. The cells weren't dying but seemed to be misfiring, like an old system restarting unexpectedly. "An abnormal cellular activation," the doctor wrote in a preliminary note. An hour later, that note vanished from the official copy. When they opened the lungs, the tissue didn't match the typical profile of bacterial pneumonia. The color between the 2 lobes was distinct, not bright red, not dull gray, but a faint pink. Under blue light, certain tissue spots emitted a soft glow, suggesting endogenous enzyme activity, something seen only in living cells. The young endoscopist observing whispered, "It's like the body's still trying to heal itself." No one replied. In the forensic notebook, only one pencil-scribbled line remained. "Reaction pattern does not correspond with bacterial spread." possible autoimmune response. A short line, but enough to make the entire team pause. According to the Los Angeles Times, Diane Keaton's tissue samples were sealed that night, October 12th, for transfer to Cedars-Sinai's pathology lab. But just as the preliminary analysis was about to be uploaded, the report vanished. The hospital's internal server went offline for 45 minutes. No one knew who caused it. A nurse on the night shift, Marissa Lott, later told ABC Local News, "We were ready to send the report, but the file was empty. Only the patient's name and timestamp remained." The chief doctor stepped out, stayed silent for a while, then said, "Don't include that part in the record." He didn't look at anyone, just said that and walked out. The next morning, the pathology system was locked. The entire forensic team received an internal email instructing them to suspend data communication. 2 technicians were reassigned to other departments. The rest were asked to sign confidentiality agreements. The story might have ended there, but Deadline Hollywood later revealed that the original report noted body temperature did not decrease following normal physiological progression. Usually in elderly individuals, body temperature drops quickly within the first 2 hours after death. But with Diane Keaton, it remained at 33 degrees even after 5 hours, a rare phenomenon. Forensic experts call this a delayed enzyme reaction, typically seen only in severe autoimmune or metabolic irregularities. Before the report could be verified, all related data was marked family confidential. When journalists from People and Variety inquired, the Cedars-Sinai spokesperson simply replied, "No cause of death other than pneumonia has been identified. We respect the family's privacy." But in Los Angeles, rumors travel faster than light. A dermatologist who once treated Keaton suggested an autoimmune reaction might have caused her lungs to be attacked by her own immune cells. Another doctor said, the skin texture on her shoulder matched tissue exposed to ultraviolet light, implying side effects from the phototherapy Diane underwent for years. A whispered detail among doctors made the story even murkier. In 2024, Diane Keaton participated in a small UCLA study on immune system changes in former skin cancer patients. That report was never published. From Cedars-Sinai's basement, news began to leak. Editors from CNN Entertainment, NBC News, and ABC7 all ran evening segments on October 13th. Actress Diane Keaton passes away peacefully from pneumonia. No one mentioned the silver mark, the data lockout, or the missing tissue sample. 3 days later, the lead forensic doctor who handled the autopsy resigned. At his brief farewell, he said only one thing, according to a colleague quoted by The Hollywood Reporter: "That body didn't entirely belong to any pathology I've ever known." That night, Diane Keaton's file vanished from Cedars-Sinai's system. No statements, no explanations, only a few stray notes, deleted messages, and quiet conversations drifting through Beverly Grove cafes where young doctors still wonder, was what they saw that night the body's final reaction, or something else being hidden? That question, like the silver shimmer on her shoulder, remains an unsolved mystery. And from there, those in the medical field began reopening Diane Keaton's health records, not to dispute the death certificate, but to search for the illnesses never listed, the traces that may have led her body to the outer edge of medical understanding. The story began more than half a century earlier, in a Hollywood that didn't yet know the word protection. In 1970, Diane Keaton was in her early 20s, a young face emerging from Broadway. She didn't know that a routine checkup would mark the first dark milestone in her medical history. The doctor found a small dark spot on her right temple, which looked like a patch of makeup. But the biopsy result came back cold and clear: basal cell carcinoma, skin cancer. Back then, Hollywood knew nothing about sunscreen or safe lighting. Actors stood for hours under blazing halogen lamps, sweat and makeup blending in the heat. Keaton was no different. One surgery on her shoulder, then another on her cheek, enough to leave faint scars on her face. Small scars, but for an actress scrutinized by every detail, they became an obsession. After the operation, Diane grew fearful of light. She covered her neck, wore gloves, wide-brimmed hats, even offset. Family members said that throughout the 1980s, she almost never went outside at noon. A Beverly Hills dermatologist once said, "Her skin reacted to sunlight like that of a newborn. Just a few minutes outdoors could cause burns." The illness subsided but never truly disappeared. In later years, Keaton underwent multiple phototherapy sessions, treatments using ultraviolet light to prevent recurrence. They kept her skin smooth but made her cells permanently light-sensitive. Half a century later, when her body was brought into Cedars-Sinai's examination room, the trace remained. On her left shoulder, doctors found tissue with keratinized structure identical to early squamous lesions. Under the microscope, there were no bacteria, no necrosis. The cells seemed to be reawakening, dividing in unusual patterns. In an internal draft, the endoscopist wrote one short line: "Cannot confirm malignancy, but cannot rule it out either." The words sound vague, but anyone reading them understood. They described Diane Keaton's body itself, always on the border between recovery and decline, between life and breakdown. Those who met her in her final year all said the same. Diane had changed. In photos taken at her Los Angeles home, her skin looked almost translucent, pale, reflecting light like silver foil. Her manager said she wore gloves even indoors because the air hurt her skin. A UCLA dermatologist who reviewed the photos suggested it was hypersensitivity to light, a reaction seen in immune system disorders after prolonged ultraviolet exposure. But the story didn't end with her skin. In her memoir, Then Again, Keaton admitted that at 25 she suffered from bulimia nervosa, a disorder that quietly damaged her body. "I ate to fill emptiness, then punished myself," she wrote. For 5 years, she lived in a cycle of guilt hidden behind Annie Hall's charm. When Hollywood glorified thinness, Keaton was among the first to speak of that fear. Bulimia doesn't just harm teeth or the stomach, it leaves long-term scars on the nervous and immune systems. A UCLA geriatric specialist explained in the Los Angeles Medical Review, "Those who had bulimia may weaken faster during respiratory infections. They respond poorly to antibiotics and face higher lung complications." Public medical records show that in 2023, Diane was briefly hospitalized for prolonged acute bronchitis, yet recovered surprisingly fast. Months later, her breathing weakened, requiring nighttime oxygen support. Still, at film premieres and fashion events, she appeared radiant, occasionally coughing but avoiding health questions. "It's just a mild cold," she said with a stiff smile. During the autopsy, her lungs showed tiny erosions and enlarged vessels, signs of tissue repeatedly damaged and healed. One doctor said later, "Her body seemed like it had fought too long, not just against illness, but against itself." Though the official report listed pneumonia, no one who saw those lungs believed infection alone caused her passing. It was as if her body had simply run out of strength, like a machine that had been overworked for half a century. The most disputed detail was in the final section of the preliminary report. A sample from the right middle lung lobe was tagged with a short note: "Foreign cell clusters detected, unidentifiable origin." These words appeared in no public record. They surfaced only through a leaked screenshot shared among hospital staff. A lab technician later said the sample disappeared from the system 3 days after being logged. No copies, no signatures. CBS News quoted an anonymous source saying the supervising pathologist voluntarily resigned that weekend. When contacted, he replied briefly by email. "Some bodily reactions defy medical description. I'm not allowed to discuss further. Experts later told Vanity Fair that foreign cell clusters might refer to an extremely rare autoimmune misfire, where lung cells reconfigure their genetic sequence, making the immune system fail to recognize them. Some studies at Stanford had noted similar phenomena, but never in elderly patients. Strangely, when asked, Cedars-Sinai representatives said no samples were lost, but refused to release storage codes. In medicine, that kind of silence is more frightening than any answer. A doctor close to Diane quietly told Vanity Fair her body reacted as if it was still resisting, as if it didn't want to stop. That statement silenced the room, because the deeper one read into her records, the clearer it seemed that Diane Keaton's body hadn't simply passed according to nature. It had tried to endure, to renew, to continue, in a way no one yet understands. With her tangled medical history, from skin cancer and immune reactions to long-hidden disorders, Diane Keaton's passing was not peaceful. It became an unresolved puzzle in medicine, a chain of mysterious biological responses that could only be observed, not defined. Some doctors say it was just age, but in the files that vanished and the sealed samples, something deeper remains, something that makes many believe that perhaps Diane Keaton didn't simply leave because of illness, but because her body itself created an ending no one could ever explain. And from those unanswered questions, new theories began to emerge, from UCLA's laboratories to whispered conversations in the hallways of Los Angeles hospitals about what really happened inside Diane Keaton's body, theories that, even now, no one dares to speak aloud. After the examination, Cedars-Sinai remained silent. No statements, no press conferences, no additional notes added to the medical file. 3 days later, every newspaper printed the same line, word for word. Cause of death, bacterial pneumonia. A clean, polished conclusion, as if everything that had just happened was nothing more than an administrative procedure. But in Los Angeles's medical community, that silence felt colder than the news of death itself. A doctor who took part in the tissue analysis quietly told The Guardian, the signs on her body didn't match ordinary pneumonia. There was something else, something beyond traditional medical description. Those words, faint and easily lost among the flood of obituary reports, became a spark for unspoken theories among those who had read Keaton's file. Gradually, across hospital corridors and cafes near Beverly Grove, 3 theories circulated, like 3 fragments of a puzzle no one wished to complete. The first theory spoke of a delayed autoimmune reaction, a rare disorder in which the immune system turns against the body itself. According to a leaked report from UCLA's laboratory, in her final days, Diane Keaton showed signs resembling a condition known as autoimmune pulmonary necrosis, the lungs breaking down from within, without the presence of bacteria or viruses. In theory, the lung tissue was burned by her own white blood cells, causing rapid respiratory failure without external infection. A resident doctor told Variety Health, her body collapsed without warning. No fever, no pain, no swelling, no skin damage. All vital signs just fell in freefall. During her last 24 hours, Diane was still conscious. She talked, read news on her iPad, even smiled while watching an old interview of herself. But her blood oxygen dropped unpredictably, her pulse weakened, and her heartbeat turned irregular. Many experts believe the chain reaction could have been the result of decades of treatments, strict diets, light exposure, and immune stimulants. A UCLA researcher commented, her body was like a system that had fought too long. That defense system once saved her from illness, but then it turned inward and destroyed everything. The final photos of Diane, taken at her Beverly Hills home in September 2025, became images no one wished to revisit. A hollow face, skin stretched thin as paper, deep sunken eyes. No one would think it was the face of a person with pneumonia, A respiratory specialist concluded it was the distinct look of a late-stage immune failure patient, when the body fades but the mind remains painfully clear. The second theory went further, back in time, 40 years earlier, when Diane Keaton was at the height of her career and still believed that light could heal. In 1981, she underwent phototherapy treatment for basal cell skin cancer, a new experimental method then, promoted as Hollywood's aesthetic miracle. According to records from the California Institute of Dermatology, Diane went through at least 7 high-intensity ultraviolet sessions over 2 years. Each time, she lay still beneath white-blue lights, her skin coated with a special photosensitive solution, her body burning with heat. A treating doctor recalled to Los Angeles Medical Review, "She reacted very strongly from the first session. Her skin turned red, blistered, but she wanted to continue. She said, 'If it can save me from scars, I can handle it.'" She did recover, at least in the public eye. But that light-based treatment, like a double-edged sword, left behind subtle genetic changes that no one could measure. More than 40 years later, a research group at Stanford discovered a phenomenon called photomutation, a form of DNA disruption caused by ultraviolet accumulation in tissue, capable of traveling through the bloodstream to other organs, even the lungs. Coincidentally, Diane had participated in a UCLA study on immune changes in former skin cancer patients. That report was never released. An anonymous pathology technician told NBC News, "Her lung cells reacted like skin tissue once exposed to light, as if her body remembered the light." That detail, seemingly impossible, matched eerily with the autopsy record. Her lung tissue glowed faintly under blue light, what doctors call bioluminescent residue, a lingering photochemical response in the cells. If true, then light had not only once saved Diane Keaton, but also returned, literally, to take her final breath. The last theory, seemingly the most practical yet hardest to prove, was a metabolic drug reaction. According to Cedars-Sinai's treatment records during her final week, Diane was prescribed a broad-spectrum antibiotic. Yet blood tests revealed an extremely low concentration, almost non-existent. Specialists believe this was a direct consequence of the digestive disorder she had suffered for 5 years in her 20s. The prolonged imbalance had damaged her body's ability to absorb medication. When drugs aren't properly absorbed, they can trigger chemical reactions in the blood, producing rare toxic compounds. A pharmacist at Cedars-Sinai told The Hollywood Reporter, her plasma sample showed a high lactate level. It was as if her body was creating its own toxins. In those last weeks, Diane changed noticeably. Her voice grew hoarse, her skin paled, her hands always cold. A photographer who met her at an art exhibition in Westwood recalled, "She walked slowly, a bit unsteady, but still smiled when the camera turned toward her. She didn't look sick, just faded, as if she was slowly disappearing." Doctors called it end-stage metabolic reversal, when the body turns against its own processes. Medicine ceases to heal and becomes an adversary, and the immune system, after a lifetime of battle, no longer knows what to protect. All 3 theories, autoimmune reaction, light after effects, and drug metabolism, could be true, or all could be wrong. But what they shared was absence. None appeared in the official file. No one dared to confirm, and no one wanted to be asked further. A forensic doctor present at the examination quietly told ABC Local News, "Some cases in medicine are better left in peace. Her body was one of them." They said when he spoke those words, his voice trembled, not from fear, but from exhaustion. Because perhaps he too felt that under the silent white lights of that hospital night, Diane Keaton might have departed peacefully, yet what remained on her body was anything but peace. It was the final record of a body that had fought all its life, where every cell seemed to hold memories of light, medicine, and fear. And perhaps to truly understand Diane Keaton's death, one must look beyond the hospital, beyond medical theories and cold reports, and return to where she lived. A quiet house in Los Angeles, where sunlight rarely entered through the curtains, where a woman who never married learned to live alone with her own fears. It was there that Diane Keaton's real secret might still be waiting to be told. In 2025, when the world heard of Diane Keaton's passing, Hollywood's lights still gleamed, yet something quietly dimmed beneath that brilliance. Television, online media, and social networks all called her by the same name, Hollywood's Queen of the Wide-Brimmed Hat. The phrase sounded elegant yet distant, like a polite farewell to a legend long past. But for those who truly knew her, the death wasn't unexpected. They said Diane Keaton had been leaving this world for a long time. No one had simply noticed. Her red brick home sat tucked away on a quiet street in Brentwood, West Los Angeles, surrounded by old oak trees. The gray wooden gate stayed closed almost all year. Neighbors said they rarely saw her, perhaps only that familiar figure each morning, in a long-sleeved shirt, leather gloves, a white, wide-brimmed hat, and two small dogs, Reggie and Clover, circling her feet. She walked slowly, short steps, as if avoiding sunlight rather than enjoying it. Inside the house, according to Architectural Digest, everything was so neat it felt cold. No television, no music, no fresh flowers, only wooden bookshelves filled with notebooks, a piano beside curtained windows, and black and white photos covering the walls. Among them were faces that once belonged to her: Woody Allen, Warren Beatty, Al Pacino. Under dim yellow light, those old frames looked like memories refusing to rest.
Hey, you want some gum anyway?
No, no thanks.
Oh,
Hey,
where
don't
is
do
it?
that. No. Would you,
Yes.
would you watch the road?
Comment.
Sonia, what if there is no God?
Boris Dmitrovich, are you joking?
What if we're just a bunch of absurd people?
Woody Allen was the first to teach her how to laugh in the dark. In 1970, they met at the audition for Play It Again, Sam. Diane, tall and slender with a ringing laugh, both awkward and charming. Allen loved that eccentricity. They fell in love quickly, living in a small Upper East Side apartment in New York, surrounded by books, jazz records, and half-finished cups of coffee, the witnesses of a 3-year romance. In Woody's eyes, Diane was the only person who made me believe that intelligence and silliness can exist together. After their breakup, they continued working together, and then Annie Hall was born, the film that made America know the name Diane Keaton. The character Annie was her, openly but unspoken. But from that point, Keaton became inseparable from Woody Allen's shadow. When Allen later faced controversies, the questions came back to her. She chose silence. "I'm not defending anyone," she said on CBS Sunday Morning in 2018. "I just don't want to add darkness to memories that were once beautiful." Her voice was quiet but steady. After that, Diane almost completely withdrew from the media. Warren Beatty was another story, a fiery chapter.
I just don't know how to say it other than to say that there was this sweet anguish of love that I felt when I saw your face in a moment shared in time together. Thank you, Warren. And congratulations.
They met on the set of Reds in 1980. Beatty, then Hollywood's biggest star, was so magnetic people said he could melt anyone with a glance. But Diane did not melt easily. They argued, laughed, then argued again. Beatty, a perfectionist, demanded retakes for the smallest details. After each shoot, they stayed in the editing room discussing politics, philosophy, and the loneliness of success. When Reds won the Oscar in 1982, they separated. No one knew why. It was said Diane couldn't sleep afterward. She read until morning, drank coffee instead of water, and buried herself in work as if silence would consume her. A psychologist told Los Angeles Times, "People under chronic stress often suffer immune decline. For someone with skin disorders, it's a dangerous spark." Perhaps it was in those years that Diane's body began to bear the cracks medicine would only later recognize. Then came Al Pacino. They met first in The Godfather, 1972, but nearly 20 years later, during The Godfather Part 3, they truly came together. Pacino was a living legend by then, and Diane an icon. They were lovers, soulmates, and rivals. She once said it was the most beautiful yet exhausting relationship of my life. When she wanted marriage, Pacino refused. She left quietly, without resentment. "I wanted to learn to love myself," she said, and later adopted 2 children, Dexter and Duke, on her own. From then on, Keaton officially chose solitude. Pacino still called her every year on her birthday. The last call, in September 2025, lasted less than 3 minutes. "Al, I'm fine," she said softly. "It's just that the light feels too bright lately." Her voice was gentle, steady, not sad, but weary. Pacino later said he stayed silent the whole call, feeling as though he was speaking to someone far away, on the other side of the light. Since 2021, Diane had nearly vanished from Hollywood. No more events, no more talk shows, only rare appearances at friends' photography exhibits. She still dressed the same: white hat, high-collared shirt, black gloves. Many called it the Keaton style, but doctors knew better. A Beverly Hills dermatologist said her skin had become so thin that even dim light could sting. She never went out by day, only worked at night. All communication was through email or messages. In 2023, she sold 2 properties in Malibu and Santa Barbara, keeping only the house in Brentwood. Most of the nearly $10 million went to the Los Angeles Conservancy for Architectural Preservation. A friend said that in her final months, Diane developed peculiar habits. She shortened her curtains to stop light from reflecting on the floor, removed mirrors from her bedroom, and lowered her home temperature to 18 degrees Celsius. She said, "The colder it is, the easier I can breathe." Her loved ones worried, but Diane always smiled, saying she was just tidying up the light. In August 2025, she unexpectedly wrote a new will, leaving most of her estate to her 2 children and the Skin Cancer Research Fund. In a handwritten note to an old friend in New York, she wrote, "I've lived close to light for too long. Now I want to see if there's peace in the dark." Those who visited her in the last week said she was still lucid, still cheerful, still smiling. Only that, they said, Diane's voice had never been lighter, as if her breath had grown thin with time. A close friend told People, "She seemed to fade away, not from illness, but from will. She wanted to leave while everything was still whole." Strangely, despite her solitude, Diane Keaton never turned bitter. She kept her familiar wit, still wrote thank you notes to fans, still took morning photos. "Just to remember that I existed," she told Vanity Fair in her final interview. Perhaps that's why, when Diane passed, many believed she didn't leave because of illness, but by choice. Her body stopped exactly when the light, which had defined her whole life, became too bright. And at that moment, the media erupted. From Los Angeles to New York, countless headlines began with the same question. Was Diane Keaton's death truly just from pneumonia? Because in a world where every record bears a seal and every answer is locked away, it's always the quietest things that people keep searching for. Perhaps Diane Keaton's final secret will never be recorded in any medical file. The missing tissue samples, the erased notes, the whispered recollections all remain like echoes between 2 realms, where science stops and where belief in the unknown begins. Her body may have stopped functioning, but the mystery within it still lives, silent, like the last glimmer of light reflecting off the white sheet that night. What do you think really happened to Diane Keaton? Leave your thoughts below and share your perspective. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next stories.